Hey party people. In this video, I want to talk about a question I get a lot. What do fashion designers do at work? What are the job responsibilities of your average fashion designer? In this video, I'm going to talk about full-time working at the office, grinding day in and day out fashion designers and not freelance designers. Freelance people, they get hired for specific projects. They do that project, done. I'm going to be talking about your everyday average designer, not famous people. And I'm talking about designers that work for companies, not immediate startups where one person is doing everything. Then you know the job responsibilities of that person. They are doing everything. The kind of job responsibilities you have will depend on how junior or senior you are at a company, whether you're an assistant designer or a design director, etc. Another thing is the size of the company. Smaller companies will have their assistant designers and their designers do a wider variety of tasks. Larger companies, they have more people, and so they will have their employees kind of focus their efforts on a narrower set of tasks. Let's start by busting some myths about what designers do at work. So no particular order. Number one, designers do not do full-blown marker or watercolor renderings at work. So what do designers do? We draw flats. We draw flats in Adobe Illustrator and we slide them into tech packs. We slide them into line sheets and we do sketch. The point of us learning how to sketch is design communication. For designers, sketching by hand is like visual note-taking. Okay? That's what it is. Because a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's really easy to just chicken scratch out a jacket and show people what you're thinking than to write it out. Number two, designers do not make patterns. They do not grade patterns. They do not cut, sew, drape, any of those things. Okay? We take the knowledge from learning those things and we take it and we look at samples, we approve samples, we do fittings, and we talk to our pattern makers and our drapers and our cutters and our sewers and talk to them about what they need to do to improve the garment. Because sample sewers, they're not in a position to make decisions. Okay? They're not allowed to. It's not that they're stupid, it's they're not allowed to. They're supposed to make things the way you instructed them to, and so you need to have that knowledge so you can be like, you know what, this would lie flat better if we edge stitch this part here. You know, things like that. You'll have factories, whether, domestic or overseas, and you'll be emailing constantly. Designers answer a lot of email, and we read a lot of email, and we are CC'd on so much stuff, right? And it's a lot of like clarifications on tech packs and did you receive the samples and when can we receive notes on the samples so we can move on to the next thing. Is this approved? Is this approved? Is this approved? And sometimes you're going to be the senior one who does do the approvals, and sometimes you're just seeing all these CC'd emails, and sometimes your boss is a procrastinator and so you need to tap on their door and be like, hey, did you get those 16 emails from our factory in India? Okay, sometimes that's your job. And then, sometimes your fabric guy from France, he'll email you and say, hey, Zoe, it's August soon. And you'll be like, why? What's wrong with August? Well, I don't know if you knew since you're brand new to the industry, but all of France shuts down in August. And so you need to give me your sample yardage purchase order right now. That whole August thing is such a thorn in my side, and I'm totally jealous of anyone who lives in France and gets to take all of August off. But anyway, those things you should know, and those emails you'll get. And listen, when you're doing production, okay, when you finally get to the point where you're doing bulk production, production will take care of production and production fabric yardage purchase orders and all that stuff. But the sampling stuff, you should be keeping track of where your materials are, where your samples are. That's a designer's job. Number three, designers do not work trade shows. When you go to trade shows, okay, there are two groups of people: exhibitors, and they're the people who set up the booths so they can sell their stuff, and there are attendees. They're the people who walk the show and potentially buy stuff from exhibitors. Designers do not work trade shows where they are selling their garments to buyers. If you watch other videos of mine, how to sell your fashion collection series, then you know that wholesale buyers don't particularly love talking to designers. They like talking to sales reps. Your sales team is going to run your trade show booth. Designers prepare the sales materials like line sheets, lookbooks, color cards, swatch cards. They do that kind of stuff, but the booth is run by the sales team. And designers, the kind of shows they go to are textile shows. That's when designers attend the show. They're not exhibiting, they're attending the show and checking out trims, fabrics, etc. But even then, we don't go all the time. We don't go every season. We don't even go every year. It's kind of like you go when you're like, you know, we really need to shake up our sourcing. Like, I don't like what anybody's doing for us lately. Let's go look at some new stuff, okay? So it's not a regular thing. So yeah, I have attended some trade shows. I have exhibited at trade shows. I've worked the booth. Let me know if you want a video on trade shows. Leave me a comment below. But generally speaking, designers do not work the booths. Number 4, designers do not go to runway shows for work. If you work for a company that does showcase at Fashion Week, then you might attend your company's fashion show, or you might be called to work at your company's fashion show. But here's the thing people don't like to talk about, but if your company sends you to a runway show for work, they probably want you to knock off the collection. If a company sends you shopping for work, they probably want you to go knock off some styles. But runway shows, in terms of sitting in the audience, they are generally for journalists and buyers. Fashion designers should go to runway shows if they can. They should go to fashion events and network and nurture long-term relationships with other industry people. Even if you're in a job that you love, it does not hurt to keep your toes in the pool, whatever that saying is, you know, make contacts, make friends. And it's always good to have friends in the fashion industry because, you know, they're the ones that understand your aggravations at work. That's why I have fashion industry friends and I have teacher friends, because they get those sides of me, you know? But anyway, for the most part, designers don't attend shows. When you see a famous designer attending the show of some other famous person, I guarantee you there's something going on. There's a backstory there. Number 5, designers do not go on long, exotic inspiration trips. You've read those stories where John Galliano went to Asia for like 10 days and, you know, got so inspired. And you're not John Galliano. Most of us are not in that position. The average designer does not get to go for 2 weeks to get inspired, okay? We don't have time for that. The kinds of work trips that designers do go on, there's 2, okay? One, there's buying trips, and that's for sourcing, and generally speaking, that's for real high up, like design directors, merchandisers. They're in charge of the fabrics being used every collection, so they might go on buying trips. I have a friend whose boss is a merchandiser who has an apartment in China because she's there all the time on buying trips, okay? So there's that, and then the second kind are factory trips. And again, these are for more senior positions, the kind that are allowed to approve or not approve of samples. And they will go to the factory in China, the factory in Peru, and they will oversee usually like the beginning of a project so that they can answer a lot of the questions as they come up. Because, you know, with the time difference and everything, you can't be sitting at email trying to answer all these questions. So companies will send one of the more senior designers out and oversee the production for a week, okay? Those are the kinds of trips that your average fashion designer will go on. So here are some more things that designers do every day. Number 1, designers design stuff. I know, right? Mostly clothes. If you work at a larger company, you will generally have an art department that takes care of graphics, and you will have a textile department that does print development. And if you work for a smaller company, you may be responsible for more of those responsibilities. I once met a woman She worked at a very famous women's wear company, and her whole job, this was crazy, her whole job was to take artwork for beading, like if there was like a big beaded flower on the side of a dress, she would lay out the beads one at a time using the specific shape of beads and lay them out in a grid pattern to resemble the artwork as closely as possible. That was her whole job. She did that all day long, every day. So like some of these larger companies, they have really specific jobs. Number 2, designers do research, and the kind of research you do depends on the company, depends on your customer, okay? If you're a fast fashion, direct-to-consumer sales, and you can move really fast and you can punch out things on your online store really fast, and your clothes are for young, trendy kids who love to look like their favorite celebrity, you should be keeping track of the celebrities and what they're wearing and what gets attention so you can spit out some replicas to sell like crazy. So you should be consuming the media that your customer is consuming. Always, as designers, the better you understand your customer, the better you can cater to their needs and the more stuff you can sell to them, basically. And trends trickle down from the luxury houses. Like years ago, Prada came out with like a collection that was very heavy on the lace. It was that heavy guipure lace, aka Venetian lace, and it was in these muted tones, these beiges, these dull pastel blues. And all of a sudden, lace was everywhere. And it was like that for a few years afterwards. And you want to be on top of those kinds of things so you can be the first in your price bracket to be doing lace. Another side note, a lot of companies, larger companies, like using trend forecasting reports from companies like WGSN. I personally have never worked for a company that used a trend forecasting service, so that's all I'm going to speak about it. But that is also a thing that happens. You might be required to attend those meetings, take notes, and incorporate those ideas into the things that you design in the future. Number 3, if you're closer to entry level, you'll probably run a lot of errands, and I don't mean coffee. My first job out of school, I was an assistant designer at a very small women's wear company. Side note, I went to Otis College of Art and Design. Y'all are always asking me. I went to Otis, great school, okay? So I got an assistant design job right out of school, and it was super tiny, and I ran all kinds of errands. I had good bosses, and I was not ever required to get coffee or walk the dogs, but I used to take scissors to get sharpened, and we always had to wait until after the cutters went home because they needed the scissors, right? We used to do evening bags, and there was this random Russian dude out in Rancho Cucamonga who used to make them out of his garage. A random Russian dude in Rancho Cucamonga. Rancho Cucamonga, for those of you who don't know SoCal, that's a real place. And I used to drive out to his garage and pick up evening bags. I would do things like take new swatches of fabric and take them to the new buttonholer we found out about and make sure that he did good work before we sent over actual garments to him. You know, I would be rolling those giant garment carts up and down Los Angeles Garment District, cigarette clamped in my teeth, trying to blow the smoke away from the clothes. Number 4, if you're in a more senior position, you may be called upon to put together mood boards and color stories for the design team. And they're not going to be as painstakingly artistic and formatted like the ones that you did for your portfolio. But if you want a cohesive collection, it's going to be good for everyone to be looking at the same inspiration images, using the same color story. Number 5, if you work for a smaller company, you will be meeting with suppliers. You might lead the meeting, your boss might lead the meeting, and you might be the one taking notes, but take lots of notes, take great notes. Understanding fabrics is so important for a designer. If you work for a larger company, chances are you'll have a sourcing department or you'll have a merchandiser who takes care of what fabrics all the designers are going to be using for a season. So again, depends on the size of the company. Last but not least, number 6, you want to know how I got good at Excel? I used to create these huge work in progress spreadsheets for the design team. And it would say things like this: style number 1, 2, 3, 4, colorway brown, self fabric half split, and second sample approved for production. Okay, so styles, status of everything, tracking where we are with designing the collection. Many companies, they use specialized industry-specific software to do things like keep track of inventory, keep track of where samples go, keep track of production, all these things. I am so old. I am 517 years old, and I'm so old, I used to use Cilantro. Please raise your hands and drop me a comment if you remember using Cilantro. It was an MS-DOS-based system on a blue screen that used a dot matrix printer. And if you don't know what any of those words mean, it's fine. All of that is obsolete technology. You don't have to learn it, but that's how long I've been around. So there you have it. That is a list of the most common job responsibilities that your average fashion designer has at the office. Please give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new today. Go visit zoehong.com to sign up for my newsletter so you can be the first to find out when my book comes out, among other projects. Please do check the description box for related videos. Drop your questions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.